This episode is all about choosing you by either making the choice to stay and fight for your relationship because it's worth saving, or deciding that it's finally time to leave this relationship behind because it's toxic or just not working anymore. So, how did we get here? Very good question. I'm sure it's very deep for everyone and different for everyone, but let me give you some examples. A lot of times people are in relationships that either change over time or the parties involved change over time, and you found that there are peaks and valleys, but you're experiencing a lot more valleys than peaks these days. In fact, they're becoming few and far between, and there have been some issues that have come up and keep coming up without resolution. So you're basically experiencing a Groundhog Day where you are seriously wondering if this decision you made years ago to be in this relationship or this marriage is still the right decision for you. And there are many, many things that go into whether this is going to work or whether you feel you can work it out, but you're stuck. And there's lots of reasons why you should be stuck, but let me give you kind of an analogy that you can relate to. I think most people by now have seen the movie Titanic, Jack and Rose's love story that occurs with the ship going down. But I'd like to have you consider who Rose was in the beginning of this movie. She was prim and proper. She was basically told to keep her mouth shut, do what she was told, and save the family. Like, the family and her mother in particular had expectations to save the family.
You know the money's gone.
She was really stiff in every way, and you could tell that she was unhappy, and of course, because the narrator tells you she's unhappy. And then she meets Jack, who regales her and the upper class with how he lives his life day to day, and he just has a bunch of adventure, doesn't know where he'll end up next. And Rose, through talking with him, really is intrigued by this lifestyle. There's things that she's curious about. There's things that she didn't think she could do or, would be proper for her to do. But yet she was curious, and Jack pulled her out of her shell to basically say, don't necessarily care about what people think. What do you want? And this is my question for you. And the bottom line of this episode is, I want you to figure out what you really want in your life. And, in essence, what you don't want, because they may not agree in terms of your decision about your future. So I think we all would like to be Rose at the end of Titanic, where she's overcome the obstacles that were put in front of her. She challenged those, and by doing so, by giving up, what she felt was the life she knew and was accustomed to, she gave it up to start fresh. And throughout that life, as you can see by all the pictures that she took with her onto the ship, she did all the adventures that she talked about, that her and Jack talked about doing together. She did them regardless, even though he wasn't there. She had decided at some point, probably when she met up with Jack, I would assume, that said she wanted to go with him and that she wanted to experience his life. She wanted the adventure. This is what set her free. And even though they were on a sinking ship later, you could tell that Rose was free inside. She decided to choose herself. And this is what I would like you to do, because it is so easy to be stuck in this crossroads of your life where you've been in a serious relationship and you may be married. You've been together a long time. There's lots of things in play. It would be inconvenient, perhaps, to dissolve the relationship, but you're just not happy. Things have changed, and there's this niggling feeling inside you that you deserve more. And I'm here to say that you deserve your best life.
To making it count.
So, let's talk about probably what you've tried so far so we can figure out where you are. You've probably tried, just not saying anything, being the martyr. You're basically like swallowing your words, swallowing your feelings, and unfortunately it's almost like you're swallowing poison because you're just feeling horrible from the inside out. So that might be one way, is you just don't want to confront or don't want to communicate for whatever reason. Then there's the person, or it might be you, where you're talking and talking and talking and you're just not getting a response from your loved one. You're not getting effort. You're not getting the communication. You're just not feeling that they want to work on this or that they are listening to you. So you're basically feeling like you're wasting your breath, which I've been there. I'm a communicator, and I feel that you should be able to work through most things with words, and the sooner you address things, that you can resolve and move on. But it takes two to communicate. So when this doesn't work so well is when the person that you're talking to is not the same kind of communicator. So you end up speaking to a brick wall. So the third person that I'm thinking about is, I feel like I've been every one of these, where you're talking to your loved one and it escalates because they might play dirty. You might end up playing dirty with words or, actions or whatever it might be. And you just end up in a fight. Things escalate. There's yelling. There's tempers. There's, like I said, things said that shouldn't be said. And so it's just every time you talk, that's the end result. And so, of course, the same result is you get absolutely nowhere and you're still frustrated. And now you've lost your cool. And now you've both probably said mean things to each other and you feel worse. So it's just compounding the problem. Lastly, there's gaslighting. And I'm going to actually read you the definition because this is not a new term for those that are younger, but for me, I wanted to look up what gaslighting meant because that is how I define lots of words, but gaslighting kind of encompasses all of this. So let me read to you what the definition of gaslighting is. It's defined as psychological manipulation of a person, usually over an extended period of time, that causes the victim to question the validity of their own thoughts, perception of reality, or memories, and typically leads to confusion, loss of confidence and self-esteem, uncertainty of one's emotional or mental stability, and a dependency on the perpetrator. Whew, that's a lot. I really can't think of anyone, including myself, who has not been the recipient of being gaslit. Naturally, there are lots of other words, but that's a really all-encompassing term for so much bad behavior. And it's sad because I think we always feel that we need to be vulnerable when we get to know someone. And when we fall in love, we are at our most vulnerable. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's at that moment that gaslighters start to use that against you. Let me give you an example. I had a relationship and he came on like gangbusters, very high pursuit. I was much slower. The I love you was used pretty quickly. Gifts, talk of a future, moving in together, all within probably 2 to 3 months. And there was this complete attentiveness. Like I said, hot pursuit. And then there was this reasonable explanation for a change in that behavior. Less communication. And when you're used to, say, a level 10 communication or 15 out of 10, and it goes down to a 7, the warning signs in your head start going off. And you think, well, that's strange, but okay, this makes sense. So you justify their bad behavior in your mind. And then it just seemed to very slowly and insidiously get worse. And of course, this particular excuse seemed viable, for an adult. And I'm trying not to give too many details to, protect that person who it's just a matter of doesn't need to be said in certain detail, but you just start to question yourself more and more. You've gotten attached, you've fallen in love, you think there's a future, you're feeling really good, like you found the person. And then it starts to slip away. That's how it feels. It's slipping away. And then you start to battle with yourself. Wow, should I really? Gosh, should I just wait? Should I be patient? I'm a grown woman. I don't want to chase after this guy. I should respect him and believe him. I trust him. I love him. This makes sense. But then there's the other part where you're like, well, wait a minute. This doesn't feel good. This does not feel secure anymore. I don't feel secure. I don't feel safe in this relationship because I'm feeling a lack of attachment, a lack of, the same words, actions. So this escalated more to just a complete disappearance. Just poof, ghosted, And talk about messing with your head. There weren't these fancy terms, cool terms back then. And this was over a decade ago. So these conveniently wonderful terms that encompass all this, you did not understand how that could happen back then. It just didn't happen, and it didn't happen to you. So that's what I'm saying. All of these things, I'm sure you didn't envision your life being this way, and this is where you are. This isn't going to happen to you. My relationship started out perfect, and I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to, ever get divorced or say I've been divorced before. I'm not going to get divorced again, right? And then you find yourself in this place. And even though your gut probably knows the right decision, you are still battling within yourself. There's still so many voices in your head. So I think it's important to acknowledge some of those things. There's how you were raised. How were you raised? Were you raised like I was? You were raised Catholic and divorce is a sin, or it's, you have to write and be, forgiven with the Pope. I mean, there's all kinds of rules. There's that, so that's Catholic guilt. There's shame, that it's not working. It might be your fault. You don't want to be judged. So there's all this internal pressure that you put on yourself, right? All your feelings about how people think of divorce, the stigma surrounding all of that. It's in there. It was in my head for sure. And it caused me to be in this situation where I was treading water, like yourself. I'm treading water because I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I'm trying to save myself, but am I saving myself or am I saving the marriage? and you're just not going anywhere. You're not swimming. You're literally staying in one place treading water. And it really is a slow death because eventually you're going to run out of energy and you're going to sink. So this is where it's the time to make that choice for yourself. What do you want to do? There's also, I understand there's, what other people think. And that's something to acknowledge because, you're raised to respect and care about what other people think. Your parents, your siblings, your teachers, having manners and looking and presenting yourself a certain way. And not that is bad, but it gets deeper in terms of, like I said, how you're raised with your morals and your religion, what people expect of you. There could also be other things externally like financial concerns, jobs. There's all kinds of things that I understand are weighing on you. And I think it's important to let those things out of your brain. I think a lot of times, like I was saying, we carry all of this inside and it's just killing us. And we're just not acknowledging what our fears are, what is really keeping us stuck, the positive and the negative. So there are lots of questions you could ask yourself, and I encourage you to re-listen to this, do it in your head right now, take out your phone, do a note, do an audio note, or just write it down on a piece of paper and a pen later. I find that when I write things down, I have time to think. However, I do think that sometimes our head, brain, our mouth even works faster than our hands can go. So the audio note might not be, or a voice memo may not be a bad idea to just blurt it all on there. So I think that's really important to first dump out whatever is on your head in terms of all of your thoughts, all of your feelings. What is going on? And if you're stuck, I wanted to give you, and I'm going to refer to my paper. I wrote them down because I wanted to make sure that I had the best questions for you all to ask yourself without going on for an hour and a half asking all the specific questions. I think it's important that you think of, how many did I write down? 5 or 6? Anyway, I'll read them. But these questions that kind of are the deep-seated questions that everything kind of boils down to. So, number 1, do you feel like a priority? Do you feel like a priority? And only you are going to know what you need to feel that way. Everyone is different. So in your relationship, in your marriage, what makes you feel like a priority, and are you feeling like a priority? So that's number 1. Number 2, do you feel like you are being respected? This is huge. This is a very big topic. I think respect is so important, particularly among those that are in relationship with each other, especially something along the lines of a long-term marriage or just dating relationship. Feeling respected is a big thing. And I think you have to look inside yourself and ask if you feel that way. Do you feel like you count? Do you feel like you're a person? Do you feel like their wife? Are they treating you with that respect of that title that title brings, that they chose you to be with for their lifetime? Are you feeling like that special person? Are you feeling respected? And in this area, I would say that toxic behavior would automatically make this a heck no. And I think y'all know what toxic behavior I'm talking about. It's abuse in any form. It can go from gaslighting, which is mental, to, and even mental, like to super degrading, controlling, obsessive, any kind of physical abuse. So it's verbal, physical, mental, anything that feels wrong would be toxic. And you are not deserving of that. You're worth feeling respected and cared for and treasured. So really make that question about respect and whether anything is toxic. Really think about that, because you are an important and wonderful one-of-one person. And if you don't feel respected by your partner, are you respecting yourself by staying in a relationship like that? Because I want more for you. Okay, I've belabored that one. Are your needs being met? And this is different from the respect and the priority conversation, because needs are your personal needs. Everyone is different. Every single person is different in what they need from their partner and in their family life at home. So I would recommend possibly pulling out like love languages, something like that, which basically, and I can get into this more in a future episode, but, there's physical touch, there's words of affirmation, there's quality time, there's gift giving, and there's one more that I'm blanking out on. So you get the idea. What makes you happy? And a lot of times you figure this out just by looking at what you give to your partner. So, for example, with my husband, I'm very affectionate, and I always crave time with him, and he knows that if I don't get that quality time and there's no affection, I'm not going to be happy. I mean, there's also like sprinklings of words of affirmation, like, "Hey, you look great, honey." But think about those things, the little things, does he just do acts of service? Did I say that one? Where he makes your coffee in the morning. If that makes you smile every day, then yeah, I would say your needs are probably being met, and it may not cover all areas, but that's examples of whether you're getting what you need. And that's important, because there's only one life you have to live, and you should be happy getting your needs met with that person that is so special to spend time with you. Like, they are getting a wonderful person, and I hope you know that about yourself. So you deserve to be treated and have all your needs met. Okay. Do you share the same values and goals? So this is a very good topic, and I know that it's hard to share all the same values and all the same goals. But in general, do you have a similar view of your future? Here's another example. So my husband and I both want to retire to a warmer climate, and particularly like a near beach. And we're just not quite clear on exactly where yet. But we have that goal in mind. Now, if he wanted to move to a cold climate, trust me, that is something that would not have led to me saying yes to marrying him, because I have no desire to do that. So just think about whether you share the similar view of the future, whether you have similar goals and like what you each want from yourself in your lifetime. Do you want to be a podcaster? Do you want to write a book? Do you want to open your own business? Is he on board? Is he supportive? Just make sure you have similar values and goals. And values are, things to do with respect and maybe religion or an overall, view of religion. But definitely it is something to consider. And I think you need to start with what your values and goals are and then determine if he also is in the same path as you or on the same path as you. How do you handle conflict as a couple? This is a fun one. And I say that because I talked earlier about how I really like to talk things out, resolve conflict, get to the bottom of it, and move on back to being happy again. Like, that's my goal. But your person may not communicate that way. Your person may need some time. They need to maybe like, hey, I'm taking a time out. I need to go for a walk. I need to go for a run. I need to go for a drive. And are you able to have that conversation where you can agree to talk at a later time? So are your styles of handling conflict the same, or is it something you have difficulty with where you're really not handling conflict well? It keeps coming up with no resolution, or you just butt heads. So that's unfortunately very important to consider, is how you handle conflict and communicate. Do you agree on how to run the family unit or parent? This is tricky. So examples would be how you raise your kids, what the rules are, what the boundaries are, and whether there's any divorce or separations that have happened where you might be a step parent, or your husband or partner is now a step parent to your children. How are you handling that? Are these huge sources of tension where there's no compromise and you're butting heads all the time? This is something really important to think about. It's not always the end all be all, but it's something to consider. 2 more, I promise. Do you consult with each other about finances and how your money is spent? Yeah, I approached the money topic. Unfortunately, it accounts for many, many divorces because the finances are such a huge source of contention. So I think you really need to just consider this question. And like, are your finances together, separate? Do you discuss big purchases? Do you have the same thoughts as to savings, retirement? It's just all important to think about. And as I've gotten older, I've thought more and more about the future and my financial security and all of that. So it is important that, especially if this is a hot topic, that you really think about this and, jot down some feelings or topics or issues that really are a problem between you and continue to be a source of stress. Last but not least, are you aligned in how you see yourselves as a couple? And is this relationship, are all the aspects of this relationship working? And this could be intimacy. This can just be affection. This can be the communication. I mean, it kind of encompasses a few of these areas, a few of these questions that I've mentioned. But I think it's important just to think of how you want the relationship to be and how is your current status aligning with that. And as you think about these things, there are going to be things that are, they're negotiable. They can be compromised. And, is it something as simple as they never clean the dishes out of the sink? And is that something that's going to make it a deal breaker for you? Or is that something you can compromise on? Something like that. But then, like I pointed out before, there are those toxic behaviors that, in my opinion, are just no-goes. Like, they are complete deal breakers. You need to figure out a way to save yourself and treat yourself the way you want to be treated. Start there. Think about how you want to be treated by someone and start with treating yourself that way. Be your own best friend. I think that's super important. I think everybody has heard of Mel Robbins by this point. Mel Robbins has been around a long time. She's got the 5-second rule. And she came out, I think, a year ago. Was it a year or two? With the high five habit. I did this for a little while, but I don't do it consistently, but I really did feel a boost when I did it. And she basically just, says you get up every morning or every time you see a mirror, you high five it. And I think part of that before that is you are safe, happy, and loved. But it's really, and I would recommend reading that book, especially if you want to just feel your worth. You want to feel worthy. You want to feel good about yourself. You want to empower yourself, because it does start there. And if you don't find a way to empower yourself in these little ways, you're going to stay stuck. And you deserve better. You deserve more out of your life. And that could very well be just, okay, there's things that I can compromise on, or there's things that I think we can reach a compromise on. And I think this relationship is worth saving. I really think it is. I just have to think of another way than what I've done in the past, because that's not working. And then there is, pardon me while I know, still getting the hang of these camera things, but anyway. Then, unfortunately, the other choice, and I shouldn't say unfortunately, the other choice is you've looked at all of this and you're realizing, or my support here, talking to you, is making you realize that you really just need to go. Like, it's not necessarily what you want, but it's what you need and what you deserve to move on and make that break and take back your life. Reach for your best life, a better life than where you are now. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Could it get worse? Because not being true to yourself, not respecting yourself, and not wanting the best for yourself is not a good place. It's not what the world wants of you. Like, the world is there, it's your oyster, and all things are possible. And I think that sounds cliche, but it's actually true, because I've been there. I've been there more than once, and I'm here, and I'm flourishing. And there are always going to be challenges, but you get to choose what your challenges are. So, if you've made the choice, and by the way, I should say one more story before I go. When you know, you know. And I say that because I'm going to go back to when I made the decision to get separated, and I bought a house. And the day that I settled on the house and got the key, it was like evening. It was in December, so it was kind of dark. And I went to my house, and I had a few things in the car that I wanted to take over. And I remember going upstairs and sitting on the floor of my bedroom and looking out the window, just the weight of the world came off my shoulders, and I felt at peace. I felt at home. In fact, when I walked into that house the first time I saw it, it felt like home. But really that day, I finally felt free again. I felt free to let that stress go, let that tension go, let go of all my feelings, because I knew that better times were ahead. I felt it in my gut. And I think we've all had situations where our gut has been right, and either we have or haven't listened, but either way, it's been right. So make that choice. And in the next episode, we'll talk about the 5 main fears that you're going to face and need to conquer if you do know that it's time. It's time to go and move on to your best life. So I look forward to seeing you here again real soon with the next episode. And I'm excited for you to leave behind your ex-life for your very best life.